Hi guys, now let's take a look at what we've got here then ahead of the China and global economy theme for your paper 3 in economics. I hope the previous two have gone well. Let's just take a look at some key areas to really think about, and hopefully these different questions that I'm going to pose to you here will just encourage you to think a little bit more deeply, will just encourage you to really make sure that you're fully prepared for the exam. Now, the first thing to just be aware of is, of course, that the paper 3 essay is very, very different from the paper 2 essays. The actual detail and the depth that you are expected to actually produce is far, far greater, of course. Now, here, of course, you know exactly what sort of topics, what themes exactly are going to be focused upon, and you're therefore expected to show your own original research. And it is worth just stressing that point about original research. Every examiner's report really emphasizes the importance of that. Anyway, let's get moving. Okay, so what have we got here? China's stalling reforms illustrate that the model of state capitalism will fail to allow the economy to become an MEDC. Evaluate this statement. So a question like this or anything along these lines is obviously really getting you to actually think about the reforms. Firstly, which reforms have actually shown a degree of progress, which reforms have proved difficult to actually introduce, and why is that the case? Is it because perhaps of vested interests here within this model of state capitalism? And then you've got the whole middle income trap here to actually explore with a question like this, and how China plans to actually avoid that. And of course, understanding the actual detail of those reforms in helping to fulfill this ambition of joining the MEDC club is massively important there. Okay, so moving on, China's economy continues to demonstrate an absence of internal demand. This must change if China is to become a rich nation. Now, really, I've picked this out just because in the past there has been a question looking at the supply side constraints, and it's also just worth considering what sort of demand side constraints there actually are within the Chinese economy, and just having the awareness of what sort of factors are hindering demand there. So, for instance, given that the exchange rate is really pretty weak, it means that in terms of actually having the buying power, the purchasing power to afford foreign produced goods, it just isn't there. So what about exchange rate reform and how that could actually help stimulate greater increase in aggregate demand, as well as reform the financial markets and ensuring that savers get decent returns so that they don't feel as if they need to save quite as much as they do, perhaps. So there's a variety of different issues here, but what this is also getting at is also the fact that what has been generating big increase in aggregate demand for the Chinese economy since those reforms began has been state investment, of course, as well as the export-orientated model of growth. Now, with the actual trade war with the US that's actually going on at the moment, and the sort of retaliatory tariffs that have recently been introduced, there's also a big issue there, okay, and how important this internal demand actually is, okay. And then where we've got this become a rich nation, okay, this is again really targeting that middle income trap, and that China ultimately needs to get its consumers spending that much more money and saving less, and how can the economy be rebalanced to help actually support that development, okay? So there's a variety of different strands covered there. Okay, so let's see what we've got next. China appears almost certain to fall victim to the middle income trap. To what extent do you agree with this statement? Okay, something along those lines. So, you know, this question is very much focused on just the middle income trap, and that would then allow you to actually explore a whole variety of different areas. And this is very, very open-ended, and this is likely to be sort of most similar to the way in which your question will be presented. Okay, it means that you can target why they look set to be to fall foul of this middle income trap, what they're trying to actually do about it, and the reforms that are being implemented, and the progress that is actually being made, as well as the ability to actually target other areas such as the Belt and Road Initiative and so on. So it really does mean that you can explore a whole variety of different factors with a very open-ended question like this one. Okay, China's influence on the global economy will continue to grow in future years. To what extent do you agree? Now, this sort of question could also be posed as, to what extent is this desirable for the global economy? But there's no doubt about it that China's influence does look set to increase dramatically, particularly as it looks to become the largest economy in the world. So that's an interesting element. But then you've got that whole $1 trillion foreign outward FDI program, which is via that Belt and Road Initiative, which we mentioned earlier. Now, it's really important with any sort of question like this to actually break down where the influence on the global economy will really be substantial, i.e. those countries that we just mentioned there that are actually involved in the BRI, as well as those areas where China's influence is not likely to be as substantial, okay? And that could be for a variety of different reasons. So it could be perhaps due to the sort of geopolitical differences between the Chinese and the Japanese, for instance, okay? So this, again, would really expect you to actually break down, where is this influence going to be substantial, where is it not? Okay, rising threats to globalization pose a serious threat to the future of the Chinese economy. Okay, so a question about globalization. Globalization has just been such a massively hot topic in the last sort of 4 or 5 years, really. So I just wanted to pick something out in relation to that. But what's also interesting is almost like the notion of globalization with Chinese characteristics as opposed to Western characteristics, okay? And what differences there actually are between the two different models. So of course, when it comes to the Western model, you've got that sort of Washington consensus, which is very much about engaging with international financial markets, capital account liberalisation, so that you're opening your doors to large swathes of foreign hot currency flows coming into your country and possibly then retreating, as happened in the Asian financial crisis. So how is the Chinese approach very, very different from this? And it really is substantially different. It's very much based on a capitalist system where it's about actually making sure that countries that buy into, say, the Belt and Road investment that's taking place, those countries completely understand that China wants to profit from that. So there's no doubt about it, and they're very upfront about it. It's not like some Western institutions that perhaps may have sort of hidden agendas or hidden motives, or this becomes very, very controversial, as you can see here. Okay, but it's another interesting element to think about, and I've mentioned it in previous videos, but China's approach to, say, Pakistan and the differences between the Western approach there, are just hugely different. So interesting stuff. All right, Chinese foreign policy will help to ensure future global economic prosperity. To what extent do you agree with this statement? So something along those lines there. Okay, so to what extent is China actually just building an empire, and to what extent is that actually going to be desirable in those countries? Okay, is China going to help those countries on the Belt and Road Initiative to develop and to become wealthier and richer, or are they just there as a new form of colonialism to actually plunder those countries? So, big arguments to consider within this sort of question here. Okay, and then another one here, China's outward FDI is desirable for the global economy. Okay, so, this is very, very open-ended again. Once again, I mean, you can see the big themes that I'm picking out here are generally about the Belt and Road Initiative and the outward FDI, about the stalling reforms and the danger of the middle income trap. Okay, so those really are the big themes, together with that globalization element, okay, that I noticed. So, I mean, we've got 4 clear areas really to break down there, okay. Right, guys, now I hope that's been useful for you in just thinking about your preparation for your China paper. Wish you all the best with that. Okay, take care.